Hello, and welcome to another episode of More Than Therapy. Today's guest on the More Than Therapy podcast is Heather Ann. I knew this was going to happen. Ferri?
Yes.
Okay. Heather Ann Ferri, a trauma informed speaker, intuitive healer, and author whose work sits at the intersection of neuroscience, spirituality, and ancestral healing. A former world record tap dancer, like Gregory Hines, if y'all know him, turned trauma recovery guide. Heather has spent years transforming her own experiences of childhood abuse, CPTSD, and generational pain into practical tools that help others reclaim their bodies, their voice, and their sense of safety. Her new book, Transcending Victim to Goddess, Disrupting the Family Matrix and Healing Generational Trauma from My Bloodlines, is part memoir and part healing manual, offering medical meditations, breath work, and over 100 guiding questions designed to help readers reprogram trauma and awaken ancestral empowerment. Heather Ann's Sacred Sweetness method and teaching focus on balancing divine masculine and feminine energies, healing the shadow masculine, and supporting individuals, families, and organizations in breaking long held cycles of abuse and emotional suppression. In this conversation, Heather and I will explore what it really means to move from victim to goddess, how trauma lives in the body, and the simple daily practices like breath, hydration, movement, and honest storytelling that can begin to repair the nervous system and rewrite inherited stories. Thank you for your appearance here today on the More Than Therapy podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. Such a blessing. That was a great introduction.
Well, thank you. We're just going to some things for listeners meeting you for the first time, because it's the first time you appeared on the More Than Therapy podcast. What, in your own words, who is Heather Ann Ferri?
You're going with it right in the beginning. You're not giving me any breaks here. Who is Heather Ann Ferri? Heather Ann Ferri is a peaceful woman who really enjoys spending time in nature, Mother Nature, and exploring what animals bring to the table, what animals come upon my path. Heather Ann Ferri is very much aware of the energy when she walks down the street or she goes to the shopping mall, observing people not by judgment, just the pain in the way they walk or their energy field. Heather Ferri is very much aware of the corruptions that has happened in her city in regards to money and how it's used, and just seeing a lot of business and just seeing how businesses are run. Heather Ann Ferri is passionate about a new earth, really focusing on how do we take all of this stuff that's been happening for the last couple hundred years. I know from my ancestral bloodline, a lot of very deep traumas, and how do we heal it? And how do we create new businesses and new ways where our communities everybody can prosper if they desire and choose to? How do we take back our land in a sense of honoring it and respecting it? That's a little bit of who Heather Ann Ferri is. Besides the career background, which in all honesty, I'm sure you're going to ask me questions about, and you can also learn a lot about that through my social media sites. But I think it's important to know who the person is behind the teacher, which I'm sure you can respect.
Indeed. You lived several lives in one body. Broadway level tap dancer, trauma survivor, healer, author. What's the thread that ties all of those identities together for you?
Self-love. Turning in tap shoes started when I was a kid. in my basement, and I was imagining I was Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, and if I could keep turning, I could go to a place where everybody was happy and kind and nice. There was a lot of turmoil in my house. And so, those shoes took me somewhere else. And that's the art of music and dance. So when I was in my show business career, really, I performed all types of musicals. I choreographed, I wrote shows in the East Village at the end of my career. But it was really when I met the tap masters in my early 20s, Jimmy Slide, tap legend, that I had a spiritual awakening without even knowing it at that time, because these men, they weren't just about the art, they were about the soul inside of me. And it was a safe place to explore what I wanted to say, because I wasn't able to speak at the time. Part of my childhood abuse was when I was 8 years old, my mother would come into my bedroom in the morning and almost choke me to death while saying horrific things to me. So I accumulated a lot of serious health issues and brain damage. So those shoes, those tapping shoes, got me to New York City. It was a vehicle. And then living, above a jazz club where the tap master Jimmy Slide performed at every month, I don't think was a coincidence. I think it was God led. And then waking up and seeing the sign that he actually performed there, and walking into the club was me taking action. And me sitting in the back club, pretty much the only white woman at that time, and just sort of captivated, not just by his skill set, but by his spirituality and his energy. He was actually, I believe, a vortex of unconditional love, sending energy to the audience. Didn't know it back then, couldn't even define it back then. And at the end of the first night, just like sort of trying to run out the door at 2 a.m. when he jumps right in front of me, and it's that one person. And for me, it's Jimmy Slide that really made an incredible impact on my soul. And it was years later, the last couple of years, that I can really, after all these work experiences and working in trauma, I can say it was that one soul that saw my soul, that gave me an opportunity to be on his platform, and started to ask questions about who I was. He was really one of the first people that, besides a teacher, he wasn't my teacher at the time. So he was just sort of this person that was this famous tap legend. And he was just like on the side asking, how did you learn how to do this? Where does this come from? And these were important questions. Why do you do what you do? And that sort of led through the pipeline. I started to get sick in my late 20s, early 30s. It's very common when people have severe childhood abuse. And then by the end of my 30s, I was waking up from that denial, that amnesia, and having to face the reality of why I left Pittsburgh in the first place. And so everything I do, really, when I can look at it now, probably in the time I didn't look at it, maybe I was trying to help somebody else or share, but really it was about the journey of self-love.
Okay, good stuff. Self-love, that's very important. You describe yourself as a trauma-informed speaker, intuitive healer, and resilience educator. What does trauma-informed look like in how you actually move through a conversation or a room?
I think it's an experience. So it's not necessarily being analytical, but it's setting the tone of walking into the room and having an energy that's calm, that has some peace, but then starts to share some stories that could be uncomfortable, but hopefully welcome somebody to sort of look within. I work intuitively, so I really sense a room, and every room is different, as you know. Every person that walks into that counseling session has got their own blueprint. And so I think having a lot of stories and a lot of experience with 8 ancient sciences, because it wasn't one science that got me to this place of healing, it gives me the freedom to have a structured plan, but to also throw it out if I need to, because I have to work with the energies in the room. I have to be the messenger to help them connect to either there's another solution here, there's something we can add to your training, or maybe you're not even aware that you have these issues. It just depends, and I think that comes from also doing a lot of improvisation in theater arts, to be honest with you. When you start studying improvisation, you have to get out of the analytical mind. And so you can't be totally structured. In fact, that's how I actually became really good at trauma, because I try this science, throw it out. I try this science, throw it out. And then when I started to get doctors and nurses as clients, as private clients, and I was working with, okay, these are all the things you did. Now we're going to try medical meditations. We're going to try electrolytes, reduced water. We're going to detox parasites. We're going to do not just somatic healing where you're shaking, but with women, they have I had trauma in pretty much every bone, muscle, tissue, and spent a lot of time shaking a lot of trauma out aggressively. So you have to have an alkaline diet, you have to have a notebook and be able to write and understand what's coming out of you, your storylines, and understand how do you process that? What are you going to do with that information? Is that going to, a lot of times it shifts and empowers people. It changes their relationships for the better. They move out of state. They do a different career. I'm making a lot of changes. I'm making a lot of changes right now in my life at this point. So yeah, that's what it feels like and it looks like. People will have experiences, as you know, when you're around an energy healer. You can feel it in the room. It already shifts it. And for some people, it can be triggering too. Some people can leave and be triggered, and that is also the work. It's like an artist. When you go to see a show, you may be challenged by it. It could be funny. There could be some drama, but you could also be challenged.
This is true. This is so very true. Those are my favorite performances. Many people remember their childhood in fragments. For myself, I remember fragments for sure, but then I also remember memories that I really shouldn't be able to remember. And I only know this because they were told to me, and that's how I formed those memories. So therefore not true memories. When you look back now, what are the moments your body remembers that your mind tried to forget?
What you just said was really powerful. And I want to note that what makes my trauma coaching work different is I'm not a talk therapist, and I have nothing against talk therapy, but I had a lot of issues with trusting people in general because my mother kind of ruled my household, sort of as a martyr dictator. So who am I going to share information to? So when I learned medical brain work meditations, they're like brain protocols. They have PubMed research, but they're not being utilized much in America or the world from what I know. PTSD brain protocol, OCD brain protocol, childhood trauma brain protocol. What that means is you're using Sanskrit chanting, different finger placements, different breath patterns, different eye positions, and that brings out the stories. That's what brings the memories back. That's what brings the pain up, whether it's in the physical body to be released somatically. So that's what my clients were hiring me for. And then there are these other sciences were built around that. And so it is a tricky thing. Like, I don't even like past life regression, like in the sense of going to somebody, because is it your memories or is it their memories? I've met people and they say, oh, I had a past life. And I said, well, how do you know? And how is that makes sense to your life now? And they can't answer that. Well, that's not enough for me. Say, I know my past lives in great detail, not because somebody told me. And my clients get to retrieve that or their ancestral past lives, not because I told them, but because the brain work that they have to do. So you have to show up, you have to learn it, you have to do some homework for about 3 months, and it takes you to that level. Now, everybody's at a different level. There are souls that are very ancient, There are souls that are younger. There are souls that have a lot of karma, a lot of negative karma. There are souls that have a lot of positive karma. So it varies. So for me, I had amnesia absolutely in my 20s. And it was really until I started to do the brain work with clients that I started to retrieve very accurate memories in my body, which would create a lot of pain and sickness. And that was one memory I told you already. Another memory that formed, I mean, there were many. I mean, I pretty much know all of my childhood now. And it's complicated because there is memories of me playing with my brother. That's beautiful. And then there's memories of me living in my basement, putting on shows and pretending to be somebody else because I'm afraid of what's going on upstairs. Like I don't want to be around my mother. There's memories of my dad being depressed from being fired by his family business, by his father. There's so many memories, and there were very complicated traumas because my parents were, they married as high school sweethearts, and they married with a lot of serious generational traumas, and they're both really, really old souls. So they have a lot going on. And there was this battle going on between them in the house, which was really about themselves, right? We know that now. I mean, I know that now, but as a child, you're taking it in. But they were so different to the outside world. You know, in the outside world, they used to go dancing every weekend, and they were incredible dancers, social dancers, and everybody thought they were the greatest couple. But behind closed doors, in my view, my brother could disagree. Others, they were not really they were competitive. They were, because they were having so much of their own traumatic issues. So for me, I have never really sat across from a talk therapist. It was really the brain work, the meditation work, and then doing a lot of energy work, just learning all these tools. A lot of them I learned on my own. And I had one Reiki teacher in the beginning who was pretty masterful, old soul. So I think it's really important for people to learn tools and have discipline and learn how to become their own healer, their own scientist, to understand their own stories. Yes, there can be energy healers and people that can validate and support and ask some questions to maybe initiate more. But we want to make sure that it's really coming from self and not somebody else.
Indeed. As I know a lot of my memories, that's exactly what it was. And I'm sure my sister and my brother can attest to the same. Because I guess our parents didn't think we would remember, so I guess they wanted to remind us or instill maybe a value based on that memory that they implanted in us. Who knows? I would have to ask them. I'll make sure I give them a call tomorrow to find out. Maybe they don't even know.
Right. Sure.
You write about generational abuse and the family matrix. How did you first realize that what you were carrying wasn't just pain, but your ancestors' pain too?
I didn't realize that till my father died in February 2022. I don't think it really registered. I mean, I'd heard about ancestral healing and ancestral pain, and I had some inkling of some of my past lives through the brain work, but it was really when my father died, and I started to hear him in meditation very strongly because I had a lot of issues with him. Even though I gave him unconditional love in the 44 days that he was dying, and I would have spent every penny to keep him alive, even though he did abandon me my whole life. And in a lot of ways betrayed me. I guess I just still wanted that love for my father. And I saw my father always as a wounded victim in this life. He wasn't in past lives, which is interesting, but he was in this life. And so it was when he passed away that I started to hear him, and I went deeper into my practice. I changed some things up because he said you have a lot of ancestral trauma in your bones, in your tissues, in your blood. And so I started to do things like animalistic movements. So my body structure, my bone structure has changed a lot. And I know that as a dancer. So like my ankles and feet had so much, which you could imagine as chains. So I started to really realize by hearing and connecting with the angelic realm, and Jimmy Slide on the other side, which is pretty magical, that my maternal grandmother, her mother died during childbirth and her father was nowhere in sight. So she was raised by her older sister. And it really became clear through a lot of different details of me doing my own work. And some of it is in the questions in my book that you mentioned, that my grandmother was definitely half Black. Nobody really talked about her, knew it. She was dark skinned. And she was repressed. She lived a very repressed life. And in my book, there's a chapter dedicated to her saying goodbye, where she, my grandmother prophesizes to me about some things. And at the time, I don't even really realize it. I don't really even understand it. But I think at the end of her life, when she was living on her own, because my grandfather had passed away and there was some domestic violence with that nobody talked about and I didn't know, that I realized she was trying to help me see that maybe I was going to be the one to break the cycle, but it was going to involve leaving the family, which I did 2 times, which is not fun. And it's heartbreaking. You got to heal your heart. But you also have to realize each family member has their own journey and their own roles to play. And part of the disease was that everybody sort of downplayed what happened to me and just accepted my abuser, my predator, and it was just, it's been a hard life because I had to make a lot of choices. As a therapist, when you're around your predator, somebody that's almost killed you, your cortisone levels go up. It causes cancers inside of you. It's not really a healthy thing, especially if they don't admit to hurting you and have no, my mom's a narcissist, borderline psychopath. And I don't say that lightly. It's a hard thing to say. But it is what it is. And yeah, so.
Yeah. So sorry you went through that. I'm sorry that anybody goes through any of these things.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's why we're here about talking about tools, though,
right.
Is that we don't want the next generation to give birth to babies that have tons of trauma through their bloodline. Like my parents were really young, and therapy was definitely not a thing back then. People judged people who were in therapy back then. So that was kind of looked down upon. I know my dad was on antidepressants when I was young. And so that's why we're doing what we're doing, because we have to stop this. And it's a community. It's like there's so many elements to it. It's not just like, for me, I'm not just in a private practice anymore. It's really about getting my books out and talking about how do we change leadership? How do we change how money's being used? Can we build trauma centers that have more than one tool? Can they have 8 tools? Can the practitioners be trained in 8 tools? You know what I mean? Can we have more, even a restaurant? Can we have a restaurant where the food is clean and the water is clean and not poisoned? That's a wellness. That's a health asset for all of us. And it shouldn't just be one restaurant. Why aren't all the restaurants? So it becomes like, for me, I've grown now from that private practice and even healing myself to seeing community, land, what's going on specifically in the United States, because I chose to be born in the United States. I chose to be born in the state of PA for a reason. It's not so it's just sort of becoming that awareness of like, what are we doing here? And it's challenging because when people have a lot of money and success, the sort of mediocre can get by, well, I'm okay. I'm sort of healthy. It's all right. So their ideas of building real wellness in these other areas isn't a priority because money has sort of been the game, right? But I think with America now coming to this crossroads, and I think we are at a crossroads where people are like, I'm just so fed up with the government. I don't care if you're right, left, it does not matter anymore. It's just a bad soap opera that nobody wants to watch. How do we create a smaller government? How do we create governors that actually solve things like trafficking and homeless and poverty? That's where I'm at too, because that's all trauma. We're being traumatized all day long. And then we have, so it's like this big, it like starts small when you heal yourself, and then it grows and it grows and it grows. And that was sort of the purpose of, I have a book series. This book has more parts to it, but this first part is more personal, diving into inner child. And then the second part that's coming out next year deals with the work environment, because I'm sure as I know, I've been an independent contractor in senior homes, and I went into charter schools. I worked at universities, and I've seen a lot of the same patterns. So when you start to study patterns, you go, why do we keep investing in this? Why can't we choose? But that takes healthy brains. That takes not a traumatized mind. That takes a new earth healer, leader, thinker to say, okay, we have done all this. We've got to make some choice. Like, it's scary for all of us, but we got to make changes that may be very different. And that's what it's about with healing trauma and generational trauma, by the way. It can be scary and liberating at the same time, because it's all but at the same time, it's like, is it all you want to know?
Right.
You know what I mean? I went on a tangent there. So
it's like me with my niche. I said, yeah, really, the trauma's my niche, but is that all I want to be my niche?
Right.
I want something more light, something more fun.
Oh, absolutely. Because it's such a hard field, and you really do need that balance. And I hope that as you continue to develop, because it never stops, that you find other things that bring joy. That's what I'm doing right now to my heart. I'm writing songs and music that brings joy to my heart, because I don't think trauma coaches, and even the ER, they should work full time. I think they need to have a balance. I mean, I think they should work 4 days a week with full-time pay, or 3 days a week with full-time pay, because it's the hardest job right now, because there's so much that it's hard to clean yourself off with it. You got to do your own self-care, and that costs money, and that costs time, and time is money. So we have to reevaluate, what is a trauma healer or a trauma coach or a trauma therapist. We have to reevaluate what that entails, and then we have to reevaluate the pay scale.
Indeed. You held a I can't speak English. You held a Guinness World Record in tap dancing. How did dance become your first language of resilience and self-expression when your voice wasn't fully safe?
Yeah, so I would say my parents loved to dance. They met as high school sweethearts. I think they met doing a play in their senior year. I mean, I think they met sophomore year, and then senior year they were in a play together. And so I got my first tap shoes when I was 3 years old, and it was really easy. I put those shoes on, and by the time I was 5 years old, I think I was doing a tap solo, and I started competing when I was, I don't know, 7 or 8. It was just an easy language, and I know that I have a lot of slavery in my maternal bloodline, including one of my past lives. So it was just easy. And so in that sense, it served really well, because, I was also a very shy girl. I think people interpret shyness as, not as smart, but I was really shy, but I was very much taking in everything. I was extremely smart, intuitive. It's just nobody knew that. And these weren't skills that were developed in schools. These weren't looked at in schools. You memorize things and then you take a test. It's so like very linear. So by the time the abuse and the traumas were happening at 7 and 8 and 9 years old with my family system, which is the starting of the development of yourself, I just became the best performer I could be, not just with tap dance, but that was my specialty, but with just all types of dance and performing, and just won tons of awards because I was looking for love in all the wrong places. I wanted my mom to love me, and I thought the more awards I get, she'll love me. Eventually she'll love me, and we all know how that turns out. We've heard many, many stories about that. But those, like I said, those tap shoes took me to New York City. And it was really when I started to get sick that I eventually, in my late 30s, lost my ability to walk, which was so painful and hard on my ego. And it forced me to have to start using my voice and develop my voice.
Mm. For someone listening who feels disconnected from their body, what is one simple way to start using movement as medicine, not punishment?
Well, there's two things. I'm a huge fan of breath work, and they may not be connected to that yet, but the breath works, and I talk about it in my book, it starts to introduce this intimacy with yourself. There's a lot of psychology behind the way your breath works. But, what I used to do with women, not so much recently, but with women in my private practice is, when you get to a point where you're feeling depressed or you're pulling out trauma, which is low, it's going to lower your frequency, and you're feeling a lot of sadness, I would just actually get them up and say, close your eyes and just start moving your body any way you want. And I'm not judging you. Nobody else is in this room. And that's the theater arts in me. Sometimes we would put music on, or sometimes I would say, find a song that represents how you feel about what you just shared with me, and go home and dance or move or scream or take that rubber bat, we would use them, and pound. And it frees up a lot of energy. It's pretty cool to watch, especially people who aren't training in the arts. It's really cool to watch because I've had women do dances in front of me and just all of a sudden say, like, I'm ashamed of my body, I'm overweight, or I'm not a very good dancer. And I'm like, well, actually, you are, because you're being honest right now with your movement. And I really, really think that's a beautiful thing. You can, I trained, and we're very technical, and I can be very technical with my movement. But there's a difference between having these perfect lines and having somebody just express from a true, authentic place from their heart and soul. And so, yeah, I would say turn off the computer, turn off the television, and find songs that resonate, and move or run, or, like I said, get a rubber baseball bat and move it, because you got to move the energy, you got to move the body, you got to feel it. And then you might feel pain. And if you feel pain, don't be afraid to go, what's that pain about? Because what I've learned after, lots of ballet lessons, modern lessons, Alexander technique, Pilates certifications, Kundalini yoga certifications, know it. I've done all the body work, is that the body doesn't lie, but we get afraid of pain and we cover it up too soon with meds. We cover up too soon. And I think there needs to be a little bit more education on this, but the pain is leading you into a release. If you're not afraid to go into the pain, it's eventually going to release what? Crying, yelling, or a story. And then after the release, the body relaxes and shifts a little bit. And guess what? You know a little bit more about yourself. And you know what you don't have to hold on to or carry anymore. That's either yours or an ancestor.
Your book, Transcending Victim to Goddess, is part memoir, part healing manual. What made you decide to tell such a personal story and also turn it into a tool? for others?
Well, about 14 years ago, when I got really, really sick the first time, lost my ability to walk, I was guided to write because I couldn't do much else. I really couldn't move my body. I was in a straitjacket. And a couple years of writing while getting better, I wrote my first book, Victim to Victory. And I published it in 2018. And I didn't promote it at all because I had a lot of shame still. I didn't want to hurt my family. It wasn't about my family, but God told me, the Divine Mother told me to write this book. That book led me to all my like private trauma clients, the scientists, the doctors, the counselors. And that guided me to understanding more about the sciences and healing of trauma. When my dad died in February 2022, he said, "You're going to need to write another book. It's going to be very different. We're going to take some of the chapters from the previous book, but you're going to write them now from the lens of a healed child. But now you're going to give the tools of the medical meditations. You started out with breath psychology and some of these questions to start to empower the reader or the coach, because this is great for coaches, to use with their clients another tool." And so there's a series, and there's a lot of teachings within this series. But yeah, so the first book, it's interesting because the book I wrote in 2018, like I said, but this book, like you just pulled up, I love it. It's written from an ancient healer who really has walked the walk and talked the talk. And it's an activation. You know, everything has energy. And so when you are activated with somebody who's actually really gone through it all, and you sit there with your pen, because we know that that stimulates the brain, and you just start writing, and you don't worry about your grammar, and you don't worry about what you're saying on paper, and you just get it all out. And then you might say, I need a therapist, or I need a coach, or I need a healer. It's just, that's what led me to doing this. You know, I want to move into more singing and retreats, and did some going into a little bit more of a different lane. But at the same time, I was like, I cannot leave all of this knowledge and wisdom behind. It has to serve, because I don't like walking around, you know, listening to everybody. I'm on meds, I'm on drugs, I have addictions. I mean, it's constant. And I have a really harsh story, and I know what I'm talking about. And it wasn't easy. There are quite a few sciences, and this is just an introduction to some of those sciences, but it's the foundation. It's like building a house. You've got to get the foundation right. When you go to a really professional dance teacher, they're going to start with the foundation. And you might say, well, I studied dance for years, but what if you studied it wrong? What if the plie isn't right? And then you got to go to this professional, and they've got to start all over again to get the basics. For me, even that's somebody that's never even ventured into wanting to know more about themselves, or this is like, you're straight in it with a pro, not somebody that's just, you know, sort of dabbled. No, unfortunately, come from tons and tons of trauma. And when people start to follow my YouTube channel, social media, they're going to start to see that. And it's going to start to say, you know what? I think this woman knows something, and I'm ready. You know, and I also wrote it in that way with my father for organizations and nonprofits to bring me in and say, hey, let me train you in the brain protocol of CPTSD or the brain protocol of childhood trauma. Let me talk to you about water a little bit and what electrolyzed water did for me. Let's look at my pictures a couple years ago, and then a couple years ago before that, and how I look now. Let's look at my body and the way it moves now at 53 years old. You know, it's about the experiences. And I did a lot of trial and error. And I love a lot of sciences, but I would not recommend them for hardcore trauma healing. But I love them. They're wonderful. But when you want to get healed, one thing is healing a lot of abuse. It's painful. You don't want to feel that pain forever. You want to get it out. So, yeah, that's a little bit of the taste of transcending victim to goddess. And as you can see there, it's on Amazon. There's paperback, there's a hardcover, and there's also Kindle.
You didn't hear me?
I can hear you now. It stopped for a moment. There was silence, but I let it be silent. That's Mr. Rogers. Sometimes you need some silence.
Oops. The subtitle discusses breaking the family matrix and healing generational trauma. In simple terms, what does disrupting the family matrix mean in everyday language?
It breaks up the masks that we wear, that we may not even realize we're wearing. The show, I call it the show, not just because I was in show business, but to understand theater. When you write theater, when you're writing plays and scripts, people start to, when you're a child with, I'll speak for myself, here I am, a child with two parents that don't know how to deal with their problems and their traumas. So I have to change myself. I have to become somebody else to make sure that I'm safe in that household. So I lose my identity. It's very common. And so when somebody in a family system, and I found this with a lot of my clients, they're the only ones speaking up about abuse, and other siblings are not, or the other parent isn't supporting you, they're disrupting. They're disrupting. It's just like when you're working for a corporation, you find out they're frauding out money and you call them out on it, you're disrupting, So it's disrupting the family matrix, that sort of thing that, like, well, there's this old belief system that you just sweep it under the table, or, just all these things. And I'm not like forgive and forget in a way of like, you're not even dealing with the issue. You're not even addressing what actually happened to forgive it. You're not even understanding it. So that's what disruption is. And it's not easy, but I in my career, and I'm sure you've seen it in your career, there usually is one person in a family system that is the disruptor. Okay, so that's a great question. What are a few patterns you see in companies that signal unhealed generational trauma? I was a part of a product company that was posting a lot of things that I did not agree with in regards to victims. But I was just kind of like, whatever. I was working full time. I wasn't on social media much. Long story short, this very well, established multi-million-dollar product company, there was misconduct happening. And the women were one of the CEOs of two of the owners was handling it as a shaman. And once it got to my door, once I realized it was affecting me and my upline, I tried to have a conversation, and I was silenced. I wasn't even given the chance to have a conversation, even though there was a lot of, I found out later through the years, like 5 years, that there was a lot of women who were violated online by different posts sexually. And it was really, really harsh and disappointing for me to understand, but we've heard this a lot in America. We have CEOs and sometimes they're yogis, shamans, religious, doesn't matter. And they take it upon themselves to handle situations when they have no trauma education, they're severely traumatized and probably brain damaged. And you probably could do I could probably do a couple neurological exercises to just prove that, because I do this 4-step neurological exercise that a lot of my clients who think they have a healthy brain don't have a healthy brain, And so this is where things get swept under the rug a lot. And then you're jumping and so I think trauma education, trauma healing is probably one of the most important things we need to do right now in the United States. We're not even talking about what's happened in the United States in the last 10 years or 20 years, with 9/11. And that, it's just been one thing after another in our face of trauma. And so I think it's going to be very important for organizations to be very specific about what type of programs they're bringing in, what type of results they're wanting to see to create change. It's not to be a slogan, but to actually create change.
Okay. It's time for rapid fire. You ready?
Okay, yeah.
That's what they all say. First word that comes to mind when you hear the phrase family matrix.
Family matrix. Love.
Victim to goddess in one sentence. What does that shift mean to you personally?
Victim to goddess. Okay. I want to really, I want to get this. Victim, I have nothing to prove anymore. To goddess, I'm a sacred woman.
I like that. Childhood Heather at age 8. 3 words to describe her.
Terrified. Sad. Shame.
Tap shoes or meditation cushion. What saved you first?
Tap shoes.
All right. One song that instantly makes your nervous system exhale.
One song that makes my nervous system exhale. It would be the chanting of Ong Namo Gurudev Namo.
I'm going to have to find that one.
Yeah, it's basically calling upon your higher self. It's a Sanskrit from India. And I chanted a lot. I've chanted a lot throughout the years, and it's calling upon your higher self. And that's guiding you through all of that. So I teach that to my clients too. We're going to work with your higher self, the higher mother, father, right, to guide you.
Okay. Left nostril breath or right nostril breath? What are you reaching for most these days?
That's a great question. I love that. Probably to do the right nostril breath, because now that my nervous system is relaxed and I've gotten the trauma out, my PTSD is pretty much gone. Right. I want to take action, and opening up that right nostril is all about taking action, mental focus, being in the moment.
If your inner child could leave a Post-it note on your mirror, what would it say?
She would definitely say, I love you, but she'd say you're a creative genius. And I think I say that in the sense of like, I mean, a lot of the stuff that my mom screamed at me was that I was no good, I should have never been born, and that I was bad, and all this negative stuff. So that whole negative rewiring was a challenge for me. And even when I was in my 20s, it I still didn't appreciate the when I had the world record, I didn't feel anything. I didn't think,
Mm-hmm.
oh, this is a really great achievement. I didn't even acknowledge that. I was like, what's the next thing that I have to do to get love? Like, it was just this, I just couldn't acknowledge that. So now that I've healed all that and done the inner child work, she's like,
Mm-hmm.
you know what? You're a creative genius. Who cares if people don't get it?
I get it. I get it. One belief about trauma you wish the whole world would retire.
Wish the whole world would retire. That's specifically sexual abuse that I didn't have in this life, but was carried down by many of my women ancestors, is a soul violation. And we need to take that seriously in regards to the debt that needs to be paid for that. So if somebody sexually violates you, especially as a child, that is a soul violation. What that means is a lot of shaking, lots of hours, like a full-time job. Like luckily I'm a minimalist and I was able to take time off, but it's a full-time job. And I don't think we necessarily have the centers to heal generational sexual abuse, to be honest with you.
Mm.
Um, maybe my blueprint will help build that, but yeah, we need to stop fluffing that over like we've desensitized it.
Indeed. A goddess isn't about how she looks. A goddess is about how she what?
A goddess is about how she respects herself inside, how she speaks to herself inside.
Right. Water, still, sparkling, or straight from a sacred spring.
I would probably say straight from a sacred spring in Japan, because we know that they are pristine about their water. You know, I have
Mm-hmm.
a Japanese medical device. It's one of the water units I use besides clean water. So I'm really choosy about water.
Yeah.
I've tested about 300 different types of water. There is actual healing water that used to be in the state of PA that is now dead. There's a whole story behind that in book 2. Yeah, believe it or not, nobody talks about that.
Mm.
It's documented too. So yeah, water is goddess,
Yeah.
because water was the beginning of Mother Earth, which is feminine. Then the word was second, God. So it's something that came onto my radar at the beginning of my healing, and I'm glad it did. You know, it came through. That was a religious experience for me. When water came through for me.
Okay. One tiny daily ritual that keeps you regulated on difficult days.
Mm. Breath work. I
Mm-hmm.
do breath work every day, and if I have a serious problem where I'm starting to get upset, it's one nostril breathing into fire breath. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And I teach my clients that. I've heard endless stories, you know. I'm just like, don't do fire breath while driving. Whatever you do, don't like pull over your car and then do fire breath. You know what I mean? But yeah, breath work, because it's going to change everything and get the oxygen to the brain so that you can think about what just happened or the problem, and either find the solution or just expand yourself that the universe is going to give you the solution.
Mm-hmm. When you feel yourself slipping back into an old pattern, what's your first interrupt movement, mantra, or message to a friend?
So if a friend's coming to me with a pattern, or for myself?
I mean, let's if it's it could be you slipping into an old pattern, or let's say a friend is slipping into an old pattern. What's the first interrupt movement or mantra that you might covet?
It varies, I would say. I would say sometimes I go to what I drink electrolytes reduced water, which is that Japanese. So a glass of that gets that oxygen to the brain.
Mm.
And it just sort of, because it's a quantum physics, it's a molecular structural type thing. And that can really shift things for me. And then sometimes if it's a mantra, it's Ang Namo Guru Dev Namo. I would chant that, or it'd be one nostril breathing, or it'd be movement. If it's like anger, I'm probably going to go to breath and then get my body moving, but not moving aggressively like I used to, moving in the sense of getting the aggression out to either cry. I'm very emotional, actually, and I think healers are feelers. Jesus was a healer. Jesus felt. Healers feel. We feel, and it's challenging in a world that can be robotic, to be honest with you. So I realized that I've done a ton of crying because I wasn't allowed to cry as a child. And I feel a room. When I walk in a room, I can feel when people are lying. I can feel when they're sad. I can feel when they're angry. And it just is, and it's a lot sometimes. So sometimes it's just when I drink that water, because it helps me cry. The tears come, and that's a release, and then I'm good. Like, let's go.
All right. One ancestor, named or unnamed, you feel walking with you when you work.
Cool. I have a lot of ancestors working with me right now. I would say Harriet Tubman.
What's harder for you personally, slowing down or speaking up?
I think that my father's death and experiencing so much pain in my body, I'm ready to speak for whoever gives me the platform. I'm grateful for this platform today, and it's time to speak. It's time to share my wisdom, my stories, my books, my songs. It's time.
A healing tool you once overused that you've now put back in balance.
Yoga. Yeah, I was a really big yoga person and did it consistently every day. And that was one of the tools that my dad, when he passed away, said you need to set that aside and do more of like animalistic movements to get into the ankles, gyrokinesis, gyrotonics, but more with breath, and then the psychology of understanding what, the feminine, the masculine side, the feminine side. So I was really understanding my mom-dad relationship in my body as things were coming out, and then starting to get memories, and then starting to get ancestral knowledge, specifically about my maternal side. Not so much about my dad's side, to be honest with you. I mean, I know my dad's past lives now, but a lot with my maternal grandmother's side.
Mm-hmm. The last one. One myth about being spiritual that you want survivors to let go of.
The myth that you have to be nice. I'm a sweet person. I've always been a kind person. There has been times where I've raised my voice because I was in high PTSD and fight flight, and I had it. When a woman has it, when she's gone through too much and nobody's there to help her, she's going to lose it. She has no masculine container, no support. So I think we know this statistically from Dr. Garber Monte, obviously, the nice woman gets the disease, statistic. So it's not about being nice, and I think for a long time I would do things because I wanted people to love me or go the extra mile. And when you get sick and you hit rock bottom and nobody's really showing up and asking and sending you cards and doing a fundraiser, you realize, I better invest in myself. I better be kinder to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so the women who naturally have that niceness or sweetness, it's the caregivers. They're in the caregiving jobs. They're in the senior homes working. You know this. You've seen it. They're the counselors. They're the ones that are serving, and they overgive. And a lot of times they're depleted. And so if there's anything that I can say to them is show up for yourself. Do what you do for everybody else. Set consistently every week, a lot of time, not just a little time. Start making it a lifestyle change.
Indeed.
I wish I would have done that sooner, to be honest with you, but everything happened the way it was supposed to happen. But I will never give up my self-care. I will never give up investing in myself and making sure work balance is there and keeping the negative, and even people that you care about that haven't done their healing work, they need to go outside the realm. This is my domain. I've worked to be at a higher frequency here. I can't be around somebody that I can't be my full self with. It's suffocating to me. It's depleting to me. And a lot of times we settle around that. And I just think for me, I've lived too much. There's been too much pain. And now my life is about happiness, not fake happiness, but what makes me happy. And it's the simple things, man. I mean, it's like really the simple things, So I would say, yeah, nice.
Okay. Where can listeners go to learn more about you, your book, and your healing programs if they feel called to go deeper after this conversation?
They can go to Amazon to get Transcending Victim to Goddess, which is a great introductory into me. And my website is my name, Heather Ann Ferri. They can read about it. It would be great to get on my mailing list because in 2026, there will be retreats. There will be Zoom workshops and programs. I'm starting to collaborate with influencers, organizations. So that's the best way to be in contact. I don't send out newsletters every week. You can always send me if I am sending you something out and you don't want it, just tell me you don't want it. I won't send it next time. But it's really just to get on my mailing list to know what's coming up next, when my music's out. You can follow me on YouTube at heatherannferri.com. That's starting to change that website. I just changed the title of it to my full name. And I'm starting to share channeled messages from my ancestors. And so if you're interested in learning just what that's like, and it's just messages that you might have to hear that day. You might be like, oh, that sentence. Okay, I'm going to write about that. Never thought about it that way. So yes, heatherannferri.com.
Indeed. That brings us to the end of today's episode of More Than Therapy with our guest, Heather Ann Ferri. Heather has given us a powerful look at what it means to move beyond survival, disrupt the family matrix, and begin healing generational trauma at the level of the body, the nervous system, and the soul. If her story and tools spoke to you, you can go deeper with her new book, Transcending Victim to Goddess, Disrupting the Family Matrix and Healing Generational Trauma from My Bloodlines, which serves as both a memoir and a practical healing manual with meditations, breath work, and guiding questions. To learn more about Heather's Sacred Sweetness Method, her speaking, and her healing programs, visit heatherannferri.com or connect with her through the contact details listed in the show notes. As always, if anything in this conversation stirs something in you, consider reaching out to a trusted mental health professional in your area. Thanks for listening to More Than Therapy. Until next time, take good care of your mind, your body, and your story. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the More Than Therapy podcast, wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Until then, be well and continue to be great.
Medicare can be confusing, but it doesn't have to be. I'm Felicia Blue Henry, and I help individuals and families find the right Medicare coverage, life insurance, and hospital indemnity plans to protect their health and finances. My job is to make sure you understand your options and avoid costly gaps in coverage. The best part? My services are free to you. Call me today at 843-906-7303 for your personalized review and get the peace of mind you deserve.